Welcome, you're listening to Upstart Live. I'm Ahmed Yusuf.
And I'm Lisa Berg. Every Friday we broadcast live from La Trobe University in Bundoora. And with the election season coming just around the corner, we have a really big show coming up.
We'll be chatting to our political reporter in Canberra, Kurt Naim. But first we have the news headlines with Marilena Dalman.
Thanks, Ahmed. Small businesses, middle-class workers and young job seekers are among winners in the budget released Wednesday morning. Businesses with annual turnover up to $10 million will receive a tax cut previously unapplied to those earning a quarter of that. Tax cuts for individuals earning up to $85,000 will also come into effect. ABC finance presenter Del Irani says the government will look for an example from abroad for revenue rising, while also hitting some more familiar targets.
Who is going to pay for all of this? Well, the government has followed the UK's lead and will introduce a diverted profits tax, hitting tax-avoiding multinationals with a higher tax rate of 40%. Also, the country's 2.5 million smokers will be slugged with 4 annual rises in the tobacco excise. Others affected are working parents who won't get childcare subsidies and university students, as the government is keeping the $2 billion savings in higher education reforms.
West Australian Liberal MP Dennis Jensen has lashed out at the federal budget, calling it a fudged opportunity. Jensen praised the tax break for small businesses, but is scathing in his broad assessment of the budget. Jensen says the government is being unrealistic and not enough is being done to improve the country's debt.
It's not so much that it was a bad budget, but it's a budget that essentially does nothing. And at the same time, the deficit is another $37 billion, and nothing in particular is being done to address the substantial debt that is building up.
Treasurer Tim Pallas says the Victorian government is unhappy with the way the state has been treated by the budget. Mr. Pallas says the budget is ripping off Victoria by using their tax dollars to fund projects in Sydney and Brisbane. He also says the federal government is doing nothing to reverse the cuts from Prime Minister Tony Abbott made to schools and hospitals in the state, describing it as a disappointment. 50 graffiti vandals have been charged after damaging Melbourne's metro trains. Police from Operation Deep Clean and Metro have been working together for the past 6 months to catch those vandalizing train cars. The 50 offenders were behind more than 145 incidents, including one 38-year-old man who was charged with more than 60 counts of graffiti offending. Ted Cruz has quit his Republican campaign in the U.S. presidential race after Donald Trump won the primary election in Indiana.
I've said that I would continue on as long as there was a viable path to victory. Tonight, I'm sorry to say, it appears that path has been foreclosed.
And also candidate John Kasich quit his Republican campaign. This means nothing stands in the way of Donald Trump securing the party's presidential nomination. Blue Ribbon ice cream has been recalled after Unilever found plastic pieces inside their tubs. The 1.25 and 2-liter tubs may contain pieces that pose a safety risk. Unilever said the plastic pieces found their way into the ice cream via machinery during the production process. Products with best before dates between April 28, 2017 and April 27, 2018 are affected. A wildfire has forced the evacuation of an entire Western Canadian city. 88,000 people had to escape from Fort McMurray. There was traffic chaos because of the residents who were evacuating. Until now, the wildfire has burned 10,000 hectares of land and destroyed about 1,600 buildings. Emergency crews are working around the clock, and the military has been put on alert to fight against the flames. Now to sport. In horse racing, jockeys Damien Oliver and Paul Hamblin were stood down from the Warrnambool May Racing Carnival yesterday. The pair were both breath tested and found to be over the blood alcohol limit. The carnival was already in controversy after the death of 2 jump horses earlier at the meet. Friday night football sees Hawthorn and Richmond at the MCG. The Hawks will be looking to bounce back after their 75-point loss to Greater Western Sydney last week. And for more sports, stay tuned for Toby Chapman's report later in the show. And now back to you, Lisa and Ahmed.
Thanks, Marilena.
There's little in Australian federal politics that comes bigger than the budget week, where the federal government announces how it will spend approximately $400 million in tax revenues for the following financial year.
Yeah, but in a year where Australia is facing the unprecedented prospect of a double dissolution election in 2 months' time, this week's budget address served as the blueprint for how Malcolm Turnbull plans to have his government re-elected for a second term.
Our political reporter, Naim Kurt, was in Canberra for the past 3 days as part of a delegation of Labor students from La Trobe University. He met with a number of politicians from opposition party as well as the ABC's senior political reporter, Chris Ullman.
He joins us now to fill us in about everything from Budget Week and to speak about how Australia's federal budget will affect you. Hey, Kurt.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
Good.
Lovely to be here.
Good. So it was a budget with no frills and none of the pre-election sweeteners of massive tax cuts that we normally see in election years. What did you make of the budget and how it will affect us?
Well, I heard one political commentator describe it as a harmless budget, and I think that's probably the best way to put it. It certainly wasn't as hard-hitting as Joe Hockey's budget a few years earlier. There wasn't the huge attacks to social welfare and to pension payments, etc., that we saw in those earlier budgets. But there was some room for there was some election sweeteners in there, not as much as we normally expect in an election year. There was a small, moderate tax cut to those in the $80,000 bracket range, which I believe was something like $6 a week, which is pretty much I heard one commentator describe it as the sandwich and milkshake tax, just without the milkshake. So it's not a huge tax decrease. There were some effects that will affect people of our age range. So there was some decrease to funding for universities, and that will have an effect for all students who are attending higher education, because universities are going to have to get the money from somewhere, and it's likely to either be through students or through further cuts to staff at universities, which will affect education in the long run. There was a new jobs program too, called Real Work for the Dole, and that has been where people will go on a scholarship to workplaces, and they'll be paid an extra $200, I believe, for Centrelink payments. And of course, big businesses all over it. They think it's a fantastic idea, but the unions are heavily against it, saying that it's really paying people $4 an hour for work, and it's well below the minimum wage.
Mm-hmm.
I guess you talked about a few things that will affect students and young people. A lot of people have said these past couple of budgets hasn't done much for young people. What are your thoughts, I guess?
Well, it's hard to room. It's hard to do much for young people at the moment because there just isn't the money there. And I think that's the key issue. I mean, Scott Morrison had hoped before to have some big tax cuts, but he just can't introduce them because they've ruled out so many areas where they can bring in more tax. They didn't want to increase the GST. They haven't wanted to wind back negative gearing, so it hasn't given them much room to move. But certainly the last few budgets, I think young people have been hurt. There have been moderate decreases to Centrelink payments, which hurts all young people. And there is a potential in the future for some of those things that were put forward in the hockey budget for them to come back if the government is re-elected.
You were also at question time yesterday, and it was a bit heated. I guess what did you make of it, and what was happening? So
question time yesterday, the opposition really went for the jugular of the government. Malcolm Turnbull had a radio interview, a TV interview earlier with David Spears early in the morning. That made ripple waves across Canberra because he wasn't able to appropriately name how much money was going to come, how much the tax cuts to business, which was introduced in the budget, how much that was going to much that was going to cost over the next 10 years. So being such a key part of the budget, 2016 budget, he did have trouble there, and Labor really went for the jugular in opposition in the question time. They continued to attack the government, attack Malcolm Turnbull for not knowing this key plank of his election budget platform, and they brought a motion against the government, which was farcical scenes, really. They brought a motion to condemn Malcolm Turnbull for not knowing enough about the budget, and they continued to harass him to name how much the costings were, and it was a very vociferous and rowdy question time.
Did you notice that one side felt more confident than the other from what you could see when you were in the question period?
Yeah, I think certainly the government wasn't fazed by it. The Labor Party did bring a motion against them, and Chris Bowen led the motion, and he gave a 15-minute speech on why Malcolm Turnbull is a liar and why he's not naming this, how much these business cuts are going to cost. And he said that if he either knows it, he should say it. If he doesn't know it, he's incompetent. And I think the Liberals were enjoying him sweating it out there, trying to speak for 15 minutes. So they gave him an extra 5 minutes, an extension to his speaking time, and he ended up having to go for another 5 minutes. So I don't think it fazed them too much, but I think it has made huge waves in the media. And I noticed this morning that Malcolm Turnbull eventually named how much those business cuts are going to cost, and I think it came out to like $48 billion over the next 10 years. So it's a significant chunk of the budget is going to these tax cuts.
Yeah. Sorry. And you also met Chris Ullman from the ABC. He gave you a tour of the press gallery in Parliament House. How did you find it?
Yeah, that was fascinating. So Chris Ullman is one of the most senior ABC political reporters, and he's someone who's been there for decades even. So he's really lived through all of the changes we've seen and experienced in the media landscape over the past few years. We took a tour of the press gallery, and he pointed out just how small some of the offices now are up there. So each major masthead has their own office there, and a lot of the big Fairfax ones, they used to have separate offices for each paper, but now they're all just conjoined into the one small office. And now there's new players up there, like The Conversation has their own office up there, BuzzFeed, Crikey, etc., etc. And really a sign of the changing media times was they've got a notice board for the Prime Minister's schedule. Now, the last time that was updated was in April 2007. So that gives you an idea of how different the media is now. They simply just don't put notices up anymore. It's all done by email. So it gives you some idea of the huge changes in the media.
Thanks for your update, Naim, Kurt, and I guess we'll see you next week with some more political reporting.
Thanks, Kurt.
Not a problem. Thank you.
You're listening to Upstart Live. It is 13 past 1, and you can listen to us every week from 1 p.m. on Friday on upstart.net.au. Find our social media channels through Twitter at Upstart Magazine, Facebook, and Snapchat. So we're going to be talking some more politics. Yeah. So what exactly is Uni Poll? Uni Poll is a national student-driven journalism project dedicated to covering the 2016 election seat by seat.
Yeah, we have Matthew Elmas in studio with us. He's a La Trobe student studying his final year of politics, philosophy, and economics, but majoring in journalism.
He's also the politics and society editor for Upstart magazine, but also Uni Poll editor as well. So tell me, what are the ins and outs of what you do?
Well, I suppose what we do really is just get together as a student team and do what really the bigger publications can't do. So The Guardian, The Age, The Herald Sun, they're covering Canberra. And as was mentioned, they've got offices in the press gallery. They're covering Malcolm Turnbull, Bill Shorten. But what they're not doing, what they don't have the resources to do, is to cover the election at the ground level in the electorate seat by seat. So that's what the Uni Poll Watch team is really dedicated to doing. We've teamed up with 28 universities from across the country, and we're going to cover all 150 House Representative seats that are up for election. So La Trobe's covering Batman, Scullin, Jagga Jagga, McEwen, and Bendigo, and of course La Trobe as well, which interestingly enough isn't actually situated in the electorate of our actual university. But it's one of those things where we've kind of found a niche, and we're trying to give the public a chance to find electorate-specific coverage rather than just general coverage, so they can really know what's on the line for them locally.
So do you focus a lot of what you're doing around what is like interesting to students and people our age, or does it cover all?
Well, yeah, obviously a younger demographic is obviously what a lot of, us as students are in, but what we're really trying to do is just offer general election coverage for people that will be voting this election. So that's younger people and older people as well. So it's not so much demographic specific; it's more electorate specific. So we'll be covering, for example, Batman, and we'll be trying to cover stuff for Batman voters. For people who aren't going to see what's going on in Batman in the Herald Sun every day. So that's what we'll be focusing on.
And you talk about some electorates, specific places like Sunbury residents are locked in this kind of battle with the Department of Health Services. And I guess what's happening there?
Yeah, so this is very interesting. We've been looking to this over the last couple of weeks, and essentially Sunbury residents have started a petition. They're angry over the fact that if you live in Sunbury, you have to travel around an hour and a half round trip to get to your nearest Medicare centre. So if we think about, Medicare centres for people living in more urban areas, 5-minute trip down to your local Medicare centre, you stay there for 10 minutes, you file some forms, things like that. And then you're out of there and you're back home. But these people living in Sunbury, they have to travel, more than an hour and a half round trip to get to a Medicare centre. And they're fed up with it. They want a Medicare centre in Sunbury, closer to them. And they've petitioned the Department of Health Services to do that. Now, interestingly enough, the department's actually hit back and said, no, they don't plan on opening a Medicare centre in Sunbury because they say it's difficult to open a centre in every town, and services are moving online, and so they encourage people to do their things online. So they've hit back in a way.
How can you see a doctor online then?
Yeah. Well, I suppose this is more processing for healthcare and things like that. But what's interesting is we actually spoke to a Sunbury resident who is actually affected by this situation. She has a son who has autism, and she homeschools him. And the thing with a lot of autistic kids is they benefit a lot from routines and things like that. And what she's found is, what she told us, was that it's been very difficult for her because her son obviously gets his routine thrown out of whack every time they have to travel an hour and a half out to this Medicare centre in Airport West from Sunbury. And he doesn't get his schoolwork done, and he obviously benefits from being able to get his schoolwork done and have that routine that he can rely on. So this is a really disruptive thing, and it's turning into quite an election issue. The Liberal candidate Chris German has come out and signed the petition and supported it. Rob Mitchell has also supported the move, but he's qualified that by saying that it is difficult to open a centre in every town, but that he will try to work with the department, work with the minister, the relevant minister, to sort it out. So locally, the Medicare centre is a big election issue with thousands of signatures on that petition.
Mm-hmm. Talking about the election, another place that's receiving a lot of, interest is Batman, especially in that pocket area. So we've got Brunswick right there, and you've got the inner cities, north and inner city suburbs where the Greens are finding a lot of, joy. And is Batman the next territory?
Yeah, well, Batman's we're actually very fortunate to cover that electorate because it's actually probably one of the most interesting electorates in the country. What we have here is an electorate different to everywhere else where Labor are fighting the Liberals. Most seats are like that, but actually in Batman, Labor are having to fight the Greens. So Batman's actually one of the few seats in the country where the Greens actually outperform the Liberal Party on candidate-to-candidate votes. So Batman's not a two-party preferred seat, it's a two-candidate preferred seat. And you have Alex Batal from the Greens heading up that movement, coming in against David Feeney, who was installed to the seat in 2013. He's a member of Labor's Right Unity faction, which is quite interesting because as a right member of the Labor Party, he's sitting in a seat that's traditionally been held by left members of the Labor Party. And Betol's definitely seeking to capitalise on that. So she's running an aggressive campaign. She's trying to target those people that are situated in the seat that aren't traditional Labor voters, a lot of people that perhaps haven't voted before, new first-time voters, or people that usually are disenfranchised with the project and process and launch informal votes. So her campaign is in targeting those people quite heavily. She's also targeting Labor voters and things like that. But the challenge for Betal is to try and convince those voters who have been voting Labor for 20 years on their standard bread and butter policies on healthcare, industrial relations and schools to vote Greens. And what we're seeing in the last 4 or 5 elections as the Greens have actually become far more popular in the electorate is that they have actually managed to swing a lot of that vote. And actually in the southern part of the electorate, they actually have a majority. There's a lot of polling stations in the south where they actually have a majority over Labor. And that's really promising for them. But really what the election's going to come down to in Batman is Liberal preferences.
And I guess the interesting point about that, and I'm hearing a lot of things about the Greens and about how they are really appealing to young people, and some people have said they might be the party for the future. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so the Greens are most definitely targeting young people. It's one of their biggest demographics. They're quite strong in that area. It's not to say that they're not trying to capture votes elsewhere, but that is definitely one of their focus groups. And in an electorate like Batman, where you do have a big young vote that's actually becoming a lot younger, you are seeing them start to get lots of support. And it is for the future. I mean, the Greens are trying to get a foothold. They've got a foothold in Melbourne with Adam Bandt that they got in 2010 and they defended in 2013. But what they're going to try to do now is get Batman. And if they can get Batman, then they're going to try to use that foothold to get more of a foothold. So, for example, the electorate of Jagga Jagga is very interesting because Jenny Macklin has been sitting in the seat now for 20 years. She's probably going to retire in the next, 3 to 6 years, next, few elections. And I've been talking to, the Greens in that area, and they're pretty clear, when Jenny Macklin retires, that's when they're going to make their move. That's when they're going to try to get those voters to come around to them. They're really going to redouble their efforts at that point. So from the Greens' point of view, it would be really good if at that point they had Batman behind them, a neighbouring electorate, and they were able to push out into electorates like Higgins and Wills and even Scullen to the north of Batman. So they're really trying to capture that northern stronghold from Labor, and it will be very interesting to see how successful they are in doing that because it could reshape Canberra as we know it.
Yeah. Well, that's great. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Matthew. Yeah, really
appreciate it. And again, if you want to get more, info about Uni Poll, how can they find?
Yeah, well, the site just launched this morning, so you can visit unipollwatch.org.au and see our content up on the site now. You can search Uni Poll Watch on Facebook at Uni Poll Watch or at Uni Poll Watch on Twitter. So,
great.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, guys.
It's a pleasure. You're listening to Upstart Live. It's 1:23 and
we have our next story is in August this year, 18 people from Melbourne will be embarking on a 500-kilometer, 13-day bicycle race from Cambodia through to Vietnam. If you see the group, you'll know it's not your typical bike ride. Half of the participants will be on hand cycles, as 8 of them have a disability. Marilena Dahlman has a story.
It's not a race, Richard Amon says. He is the CEO of Disability Sport and Recreation. At the start of each day, the team begins with a checkpoint to reach. They'll stop along the way, but in the end, they will meet again at their given destination. Cycle Power is supporting people with disability in Victoria and overseas. The initiative was created by Disability Sport and Recreation 6 years ago, from the belief that participation in sport and recreation is a basic human right and is vital for the health and well-being of people of all abilities, according to Mr. Amon.
The two main challenges are actually participating in the event. There's the physical challenge of just being able to finish and to really overcome a whole range of obstacles of riding in 35-degree heat. It's in the middle of wet season, so it's going to be wet. There's all sorts of potholes on the roads, all sorts of difficulties about just physically completing the challenge.
Another challenge for the participants is they have to raise $5,500 to participate. Those funds are used to get to the destination, and the excess is used to support Victorians with disabilities, but also other sports disability organisations overseas, helping them buy equipment and supplies. Included in the group are Leanne Del Tozo and Shelley Chaplin. They are always doing the right together, and they love pushing themselves physically in being athletes. Shelley thinks this is the hardest part. She was born with a tumour in her spine, which had to be removed when she was young. Part of Shelley's spinal cord was damaged. She is an incomplete paraplegic, so she can move and feel her legs, and she is able to stand, but cannot walk. Shelley just wants to enjoy the whole experience.
And I think it's important for everybody, and so whatever way I can help out, I think that's important. But also because we're going to another country, it's important to show people who maybe don't have a very good perception of others with disabilities what people with disabilities can do and what they're capable of.
When people see Leanne Del Tozo, it isn't immediately obvious that she has a disability as she rides a normal bicycle. She has a genetic neurological condition called hereditary sensory and motor neuropathy. She has weakness in her fingers and in her legs and no motion in either foot, so she wears leg spines to hold them up. Leanne has balance issues. She cannot run or jump, nor stand on her toes, but she can walk and ride a bicycle. But when she and Shelley first signed up, she had to relearn how to ride a bike. To ride up mountains, she had to knuckle down and become headstrong.
It's challenging. It's probably the hardest thing that I've ever had to do, but it's so rewarding because it's all about me and what I can do, and that I can do it in my own time. But also I think it takes you on like a spiritual journey that it is about you and where your head's at, and you can have some time to reflect on the bike, and when you think it gets tough, you have to talk yourself through it, or if you're going downhill and downhill sort of scares me, I have to talk and calm myself down to sort of process that I am okay, and I'm facing my fears of falling off a bike every day, so to overcome all of those things and come out feeling confident and that I can do anything I set my mind to is quite rewarding.
For 2016, they have chosen Cambodia as the start of their journey. Part of the route goes through quieter villages. For some of the locals, CEO Richard Amon says, it'll be unusual to see people with a disability on a hand cycle or a normal bicycle, let alone participating in an activity like the cycle power ride. It will be the first time Richard participates in this ride. He's looking forward to this year's challenge and to reunite with the women's wheelchair basketball team that the 2011 edition of Cycle Power helped set up.
This team didn't exist before the trip went there, so we were able to go there, really gather together some local women from a particular area who were potentially had some interest in sport but really didn't have the skills or the equipment or the expertise to do it. And we were able to go in there, help train them up, help them develop into a fully fledged team. We then sent a coach that went over there after our initial visit to help work with the girls to come up with a proper team. And this year we're really looking forward to actually going back and revisiting that team and seeing how they progressed in the 5 years since we've been there.
In the future, they want to visit other regions in Southeast Asia. Many countries there possess high numbers of people with disabilities. They want to visit and support these areas. The team is looking forward to August, the coming challenges in the new countries and the participants' achievements, but also showing the world what is possible. This has been Marilena Dahlmann for Upstart Live.
That was Marilena Dahlmann's story on Cycle Power. You're listening to Upstart Live. It is 29 past 1. You can find us at upstart.net.au. And now we have BENtertainment.
Can you entertain us? Or can you?
We're getting way too much mileage out of that name, I think. I don't even approve of it.
I feel like that's what the segment's called, and so we're going to keep calling it that.
I'll just have to get used to it then.
Yeah.
We had a bit of talk about Batman the area before, and I'm actually here to talk to you guys about the Caped Crusader variety.
Ooh,
just a little bit different, just mixing it up. So what do we got? This past week, Batman's coming up after this. This past week saw the 2016 to 17 state budget announced, which included $152 million in funding for Victoria's creative and cultural sectors. Approximately $115 million of the funding has been allocated to Victoria's first creative industry strategy, Creative State, in quotations. This strategy comprises of 40 different initiatives, all aimed at promoting and sustaining the arts and entertainment industries in Victoria. So that's good. That's always good. More money is always fun.
Money's good.
Yeah.
Money's great. In other news, DC Comics, here's the Batman reference, has recently announced big changes to its coming superhero universe following the Rebirth event later this year. Some of the changes include a 17-year-old Chinese Superman, a superpowered Lois Lane, and a Latina Green Lantern. So if you're into the whole diversity and representation in media, this is...
Yeah.
People are pretty happy about this. So
That's cool.
These are comics that are coming out, or these are movies that are coming out?
Comics. So this is a comic universe. DC likes to do this reset thing occasionally where they take all the stuff they've done and say, that doesn't happen anymore. We've got a new universe. And in this one, there's still going to be Superman, but he's gone somewhere. And now we've got a Chinese Superman.
Did DC Comics do the Black Latino Spider-Man? Was that them or was that Marvel?
That's Marvel Comics.
Oh, that was Marvel.
And I don't actually know. They have had a couple of different Spider-Mans. So
because like that was because they just got the rights for Spider-Man, so now they don't need to call it Amazing Spider-Man. They can just say Spider-Man now.
Who owned Spider-Man before?
I have no clue.
Fox.
Fox.
So that's why there's lots of confusion around the movies because X-Men and Spider-Man weren't part of like the Avengers.
Yeah.
But now the rights are slowly going back to Marvel.
So does Marvel own X-Men too? Or are they going to be in the Avengers movies?
Not yet. They have to wait until the movies are done, and then Fox has to release the rights. So, yeah.
Interesting.
It confuses a lot of people.
Yeah.
It really does.
Too much switching.
So now onto our trailer trash segment, which is coming up. Just a quick note before we get into that. These trailers that you're about to see have been edited down for time's sake. So if you enjoy them, please go onto YouTube, watch them, give them a like.
I enjoyed them.
Thanks, Ahmed.
Ahmed's going to watch them after the show.
You should have watched them before the show.
I watched them before the show.
Oh, okay, good.
Both of them.
The full ones after the show. I'm sorry, I should have clarified.
I've watched both of them.
He's watched the trailers.
For this week's Trailer Trash, we're starting off with a bizarre little film starring Daniel Radcliffe and Paul Dano. Here's Swiss Army Man.
What? Hey!
You just have to remember till the universe picks its time.
I need you to help me get home. Okay, buddy?
Okay, buddy. This is the life I've forgotten.
This is just the beginning.
Yeah, that one looks interesting.
Yeah, that's a way to put it.
Yeah,
I feel like it's a good idea though. There's a lot of remakes coming out, a lot of, book adaptations, the Marvel movies. This seems like a movie that's totally original.
Yeah. Well, at least it is for me. I don't know if...
I've never seen it. It was kind of like I looked at it, I kind of got a bit of it, but I didn't really get it. So, that's a kind of good trailer because it leaves you wanting to watch the film. Sometimes you see trailers and it's basically the film in a nutshell and the plot's gone.
It spoils everything.
Yeah. It's like the ultimate spoiler.
Yeah, whereas that one is very much it's bizarre. It gets your attention, and it's got some big name actors too. So
definitely,
I'm pretty keen to see that one.
Harry Potter is in it, so
his name's Daniel Radcliffe.
I know what his name is.
He actually has a name. He has an identity outside of Harry Potter. Okay,
all right.
He's been trying to do that for years. But anyway.
He'll always be
Harry Potter's champion.
He knows it too.
Yeah.
He's locked into that forever. He's a child star.
Yeah.
So last but not least, we have the first trailer for Snowden, starring a very bespectacled Joseph Gordon-Levitt.
You wanted to be special forces?
Yes, sir.
Why do you want to join the CIA?
I'd like to help my country make a difference in the world.
The average test time is 5 hours.
I'm done, sir.
It's been 40 minutes.
38 minutes. What should I do now?
Whatever you want.
The deputy director of the NSA offered me a new position.
Can you tell me anything about it?
You know I can't.
You're making people very happy.
Thank you.
You ready for a little action?
Oh, this looks juicy. How is this all possible?
Think of it as a Google search, except instead of searching only what people make public, we're also looking at everything they don't. Emails, chats, SMS, whatever.
Yeah, but which people?
The whole kingdom, Snow White.
The NSA is really tracking every cell phone in the world. I just want to get this data to the world. Hey. I feel like I'm made to do this, and if I don't do it, then I don't know anybody else that can.
I'm really looking forward to this film. Like, really looking forward to this film.
It looks a little cheesy to me, like they've really dramatized it.
Mm-hmm.
But Joseph Gordon-Levitt, if you compare it to some of the video footage of Snowden that is on the internet, you can tell that he's studied how Snowden behaves and talks, because he's lowered his voice. He's talking like Snowden does.
Yeah.
He's put a lot of effort into it.
He's a good actor. I
He's
think
a good actor.
He's very good at doing that. Did you guys see the documentary that came out like 4 or 5 years ago?
I was just talking to someone about this before the show. Citizen 4?
Yeah.
I think it was called, yeah.
No, I've not seen it.
I haven't seen it. I'd like to. Apparently it's all about Snowden and all that sort of stuff. So might be good prerequisite viewing for this film.
Yeah, it's a pretty dramatic story. I mean, it would make sense that they dramatize it a little bit.
Because it's like literally going against the American government.
It's a bold move.
And he's like, it's like everything you think of, like this agency guy gets in the scoop, sends it to the media, leaves the country, goes to Russia, and now he's in Moscow. So like, it's literally everything. It's like everything Americans think of when someone does something like out of the ordinary.
Yeah.
Or goes against America. They
Yeah,
go to
exactly.
Russia.
They go to Russia, yeah.
But he's not like a superhero looking guy. He's just like a regular,
I'd like to know-
bespectacled guy.
Yeah, I'd like to know if the Rubik's Cube thing he had, and I don't know if that's true. Did he sneak it out in a Rubik's Cube?
That
Or
would
if
be
that's just for the
so
film?
cool.
Think so?
That's pretty stealth if he did. I've got to admit.
But also, like, if anyone wanted to hear like an interview with Snowden, he had like a really good interview with Neil deGrasse Tyson on his podcast Star Talk Radio. Like, check that out. And he basically got he spoke to him for like 2 hours. This 2-part series, and it just you get insights into Snowden that you probably wouldn't have got into, how he got into the CIA, why he was interested in doing it, and everything like that, the backdrop of 9/11, and how he felt as a young person in America, living near New York, all this kind of stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
It's really interesting.
It should. I want to see the Citizen 4 film, and then I want to see that.
Yeah.
As cheesy as it looks.
Cool. Well,
I hope you have entertained everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming in, Ben.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah, of course.
Hope the rest of the show goes awesome.
Thank you. Coming up, we have what's going on the internet with our Upstart media editor, Rachel Roberts.
Hey there, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
What do you got for us this week?
This week, we actually have a lot going on, so it's quite hard to choose. But my personal favourite is a piece about filicide, which is when parents kill their own children, and that's by our staff writer, Kate Kelly. So pretty heavy stuff. And apparently in Australia, around 27 children are murdered by their parents each year. And that's really high.
Mm-hmm.
That's scary.
Yeah, it's really scary compared to like other countries that are similar to us.
So what are some of the reasons that this happens?
Well, what I found really interesting about this particular article is there seems to be this notion that it's often about postnatal depression.
Mm-hmm.
Does anyone else kind of got that impression?
Yeah.
But apparently that's most unlikely, like the most unlikely cause. There is another illness called postpartum psychosis, but that's very, very rare, whereas postnatal depression is very, very common.
So why is it happening?
There's like many factors, mental illness, but like not necessarily postnatal depression, but like sometimes different sorts of depressions and parent separation, being a victim of domestic violence and a history of child abuse. But usually it's a combination of those factors that might make someone do something like this.
Mm-hmm. So does the postpartum psychosis play into it a lot, or is it just another factor that you wouldn't consider?
That can happen. Like, I mean, with postpartum psychosis, you might think that your child is older than it is. So you might like do something with a newborn baby, like put it in a jolly jumper as their example was, and, you know, accidentally hurt it. But yeah, postpartum psychosis is so rare.
Mm-hmm.
Like, so that's quite interesting. If you think about a lot of TV shows,
mm-hmm.
you know, whenever someone has postnatal depression, like it's always kind of like, oh, they're going to hurt the baby.
The extreme, yeah.
But yeah, that's a massive misinformation there.
Interesting. What else do you have for us?
There's another one about biodiversity from Catherine McLeod. Apparently, the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning for Victoria are accepting submissions from the public about what they'd like seen done with the Victorian environment. There was a student called Erin, and she's really concerned about the wetlands. Apparently, 2/3 of Victorian wetlands have been lost. And there's another person called Emma, and she's worried about the bees.
Bees are very important for the environment, and they are.
I don't know about you, if anyone else watches Doctor Who. I was watching. There was like this bit on Doctor Who about the bees and how the bees are disappearing. And now after that, that's just a bit scary about that interlinking of sci-fi stuff.
Yeah, I forget what it was on Doctor Who. Something like there was a missing planet or whatever.
Yeah.
But apparently in real life, it's like the pollution in the air. It makes it harder for them to find food and disorientates them.
Yeah.
Which is a bit sad.
Did you know I had, when I was living in a basement and I had this bee buzzing around and I was trying to, I don't want to kill it because bees are endangered and they're so important. And I was trying to catch it, and if you turn the light off, it totally disorients them and they'll fall to the ground, and you can like scoop them up and put them outside.
I did not know that.
Yeah, it's a fun fact about bees.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I think I got stung by a bee once in my life.
Yeah, they don't really sting you.
They do.
The light thing.
They don't sting you unless like provoked, though. They leave you alone.
No. That's not. I was like 4 years old.
Wasps will sting you. Hornets will sting you, but bees won't sting you.
It's a bee, okay.
Yeah.
Trying to take my trauma away from me.
Does the light thing work with wasps? Because that would be really good information.
I don't know. I hope so, because wasps are awful. I hate them.
But also another article, because this goes through I guess the theme of the show about Uni Poll watch with the election coming up, and how we spoke to Kurt earlier in the show, and Matt, who came on the show before, wrote an article about a guide to the 2016 budget. So talking about that.
About students, yeah, about how that's going to affect us. Lots of people are getting really excited about the whole concept of no dereg, but actually, as Matthew pointed out, it's actually more like no dereg for now. But yeah, there's going to be quite a lot of cuts to higher education, lowering the help repayment to $40,000 a year, and that is not much money. So that's kind of concerning for all of us. Another thing we can all be concerned about is the PATH program, Prepare, Trial, Hire, where the government will put you in a program for 5 months, and part 1 will be they teach you skills, part 2 they put you in an internship, and part 3 you can get youth wage benefit subsidy.
Just with the PATH thing, it doesn't really spell PATH, does it? It spells PTAH, but even if that's if you put the and.
Yeah, I always thought that was strange too. I guess they just really wanted to say PATH, don't they?
Yeah, but also the concept of $4 work, like you're basically working, and you'll be working for $4 an hour. That's below minimum wage by a long shot.
Unpaid internships here? Is that a common thing to do unpaid internships?
Yeah, but not it just I feel like the thing, if you do unpaid internship, it's off your own bat opposed to.
I was talking to someone about this the other day because my mum was saying to me that it's a very American thing, unpaid internships. Like, I don't ever remember anyone in our parents' generation expected to do internships for free. Like, it seems very strange that all of a sudden, well, especially me being a journalism student, we're expected to do internships.
Yeah, it is. It's an unfortunate. My last program in Canada, we had to do an unpaid internship to graduate. It was necessary. It was a necessary part of our schooling. So it's strange.
Yeah.
I don't know, tradition, I guess.
But thank you for all of that, Rachel. Really appreciate your time. And remember, check out the Upstart website, upstart.net.au, for more interesting and insightful stories. And hopefully we get you back on next week.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Rachel.
See
you.
And, it's that time of the week again where we look at the sport report.
Yes, we have Kyle and Toby joining us for our Friday sports report. Hello.
Hey guys, how are you? It's always good to be here.
How are you?
I'm quite good. Got Kyle joining me next to me.
Yeah, how you going?
And before we start, I'm feeling I'm feeling musical.
Why are you feeling musical, mate?
It's the sports report. That's why.
Okay.
Doesn't that get you excited?
Yeah, it does. I'm very excited.
So we're kicking off with the AFL this week, and in my opinion, the biggest news coming out of the team lineups last night is Richmond axing ruckman Ivan Maric, as well as losing their injured skipper Trent Cotchin ahead of their big clash tonight against Hawthorn. Maric would have entered the season as their number one ruckman, but he was ruled out early because of injury. This is what Richmond's forward coach Greg Moller had to say about the decision to omit him.
We just decided to go with the one ruck, and we think that Hammer's just in front of him at the moment. And the same thing, we expect Ivan to come out and dominate in the VFL and put his name up for selection next week.
Kyle, an out-of-form Maric is another big blow for an out-of-form Richmond, but what do you think this means for his future at the club?
I think they've got to cut their losses with Ivan. I think he's done. They've had a good run out of him over the last couple of years. He's been very well, performed very well in 2013, 2014.
2012 as well, he was very
2012,
good.
yeah.
He came to the club.
Yeah, he's just past it. He's probably run his luck out with his mullet, I reckon. He's used all his magical Samson powers out of his mullet, and he's probably getting a bit old, and they've got to regenerate their list.
They do. They've got a few players coming out of contract at the end of the year, and he's one of them. I think he's turning 31 this year, but I think last year was probably a bit of a down year as well, and struggling with injury and form this year. I agree. I can't see him going on at Richmond at the end of the year. I think they need to get rid of him. But the hottest topic, I reckon, in the AFL media this week was the reignited debate about Greater Western Sydney's youth academies, particularly in the Riverina region. The Giants have access to a large area of talent through New South Wales and the border area. On Wednesday, Coach Leon Cameron dismissed any idea that his side were receiving an unfair advantage as a result.
If Sydney and the Giants and the Lions and the Suns are producing more players into the AFL system via Queensland, via New South Wales, it's only a good thing, and it's water off a duck's back, some of the comments from down south.
Kyle, I know as a Collingwood supporter you've got some pretty strong opinions on this.
Yeah, I do have some strong opinions. My opinions are more based around their salary cap sort of extension they get an extra $760,000 to spend this season. But what's happening with the GWS, it's going back to the old zones between sort of the 60s and the 1987 draft was the first draft. Basically, in that time period, only 4 clubs won premierships. That was Richmond, Carlton, North Melbourne and Hawthorn. And the way that worked, there was metro zones and country zones. So where I'm from, Warrnambool, was a Fitzroy zone. And then Hamilton above that was Collingwood, and then Wimmera was Essendon, which is why Tim Watson's at Essendon. He's from Nil. And what's happening is they're getting this massive zone and only they can pick from it. And what that did was created a massive it made the competition non-competitive because there was a massive area or a really good, strong area, and no other club could get access to those players. This is what's happening now. Eddie Maguire, and that's scared that the GWS is just going to, in the next 6 years, so he just doesn't want that to happen.
So yeah, what's scaring the clubs is last year the Giants selected 4 players from the Riverina area in the draft and they had priority to them, so they got a discount. This year there's the potential for 5 top 30 talents to come to them in the draft, including the possible number 1 pick. So it looks like there probably needs to be some sort of control held over them. Now, after 2 o'clock, we'll be talking a bit more sport. We'll be quickly talking NRL and cricket, and we'll touch on this weekend's AFL games. But before that, we've got a report into the pay gap in women's soccer. We're going to cover NRL straight away, actually. The Parramatta Eels have been docked 12 competition points and fined $1 million after they were found to have breached the salary cap. The Eels will not play for points until they are able to comply with the cap. Yesterday, they submitted a retirement application on behalf of injured forward Anthony Watmoe. The application rests on a doctor's ruling in the next week on whether his injury is career-ending. If it's accepted, the Eels will likely be under the salary cap and therefore eligible to play for points before next week's game against South Sydney, but it's a race against time at the moment. Thank you, guys.
Thanks
guys.
Toby and Kyle. And now we're going to be moving on. Before we do move on, it is 51 past the hour and
9 minutes to 2.
9 minutes to 2. You're listening to Upstart Live. We're live every Friday from 1 p.m. From 1 p.m. La Trobe University Studios, and you can find all of this on upstart.net.au. And right now, we're back with
What the
What?
Hello.
Hi, Alana. How are you?
Good. I'm going to tell you about what the what for my week because it's been so crazy and the story is ridiculous as of yesterday. So dislocated my knee on Sunday. It's fine. I do it all the time. Took an endo on Wednesday night because I played netball and it was just incredibly sore and I just could not get to sleep. Wake up really late on Thursday, sleep through everything. Then I quickly run to the shops, leave my phone at Woolworths, expect people to hand it in. So I walk home and then I'm like, oh my God, I don't have my phone. Go back to Woolies, don't have it. Turn on, find my iPhone, and someone had taken it and not handed it in.
No.
And we saw that it was in Flemington because this was in Uni Poll, so it wasn't too far away. So we did the whole turn my iPhone on thing, go door knocking on everyone's houses, and nobody had even been to Woolworths, and we're like, oh, what the heck. Went back home, grabbed our laptop because we realized that you could turn a little sound on when it's Find My Phone, and go to this park, we could hear this noise, and someone had just dumped it in the bush. So someone had taken my phone, walked half an hour to Flemington from Uni Ponds, not realised that I have a pass lock on it, and so my boyfriend James had called 21 times and just dumped it in the bloody bush, you jerks.
That's the weirdest thing. I
Wow.
feel like
What's the point of that?
It's just
I feel like that's
unnecessarily
just
cruel,
so much effort.
It's so much effort to make my day so much harder.
Yeah.
And
Did you get your phone back?
I got my phone back, but
Is it fine?
It's fine. But
I feel like they just wanted to play a trick on you
Yeah.
or something. Like,
It's
I'm just gonna
it's
leave
a really
this
weird
wherever.
story. I can't wrap my head around it because we were calling and calling, it was ringing. If you wanted to steal a phone, wouldn't you just turn it off?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And take out the SIM or something? And it's just weird. I think they got. We think it's like a kid or something. Maybe they got scared and they had a phone.
Probably.
Yeah. And then I came home to find out my housemate had spilled tea all over my laptop.
Oh.
Electronics
broken.
are not
So,
going well for you this week.
I'm out. No more.
I'm tapping out. It's over now.
Yeah.
It's over.
No more.
So is your laptop completely?
It's completely lost.
All right. So to give you some hope, my laptop. I think I told you this before.
Yeah.
My laptop from last year, water spelled all over it. I had jelly beans in my bag as well. So the jelly beans got onto the laptop as well. So it became kind of this weird slushy thing. And I thought it was over. It was done. It was finished. And I had to. Thankfully, I had like a insurance thing, so I could get a new laptop. Still have to pay some money, but get a new laptop.
Yeah.
So I had my old laptop in my room for 6 months.
Yeah.
My sister goes to my room saying, I need to use Ahmed's laptop, and she opens the laptop. It's not this laptop. It's the old laptop, and it's working.
Do you know what the weird thing about that story is? That you eat jelly beans.
Yeah, I had the exact same thought.
I eat jelly beans because I'm diabetic and when my sugar's
sorry.
low.
No joke.
Thank you for
What kind of
just,
jelly beans do you like?
I don't really like jelly beans. I just have it because when my sugar's low,
Are
I
they
need
the
to
ones
have
that
it.
you get from the pharmacy and they're like
Yeah.
the glucose? Ugh.
Yeah.
Ugh.
I'm sorry that I have type 1 diabetes and you don't like that.
I'm sorry.
It's
I
fine.
don't want to be rude. It was
Oh,
just
it's
funny.
fine. It's totally okay.
All right, then I'll go on straight into the story. I found out, I read about it this morning. There's a festival called the Boring Conference, and it's sold out. So people actually
So it's not
pay
boring.
to go to. Well, yeah. Like this year's speakers are set to give talks on pedestrian crossing signals, paper bags, lampposts, toilet roll quality control codes, and bricks.
How much are the tickets?
That's
I
some
don't know.
riveting stuff, really. That is
Like,
some riveting
I
stuff.
tried looking at it because, you know, you can say, oh, it's sold out. But I mean, if it's just a conference of 10 people.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure. But the guy who's the organizer, he has legitimately written a book, and it's called Adventures in Stationery, A Journey Through Your Pencil Case.
I feel like he's just messing with people. Like, what is the worst thing I can make people come to? Just
I don't know.
People buy into it.
I just can't believe people actually pay for it. That's really rather
How much was it?
annoying.
Wait,
I don't.
it
I
really
can't
depends how
find-
much the tickets are. So, like, if the ticket's like $10, I could see.
What's the point?
Even
No.
if it was $10, if it was free, maybe just to see what it was about. But I wouldn't
maybe
pay.
maybe people like. Why are you judging people's interests? Maybe they
I'm
like.
not
it.
judging people's
I
interests.
just don't want
I
to
just
listen
think
about
it's
bricks.
interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe they're about like really cool bricks that
No.
that are unbreakable.
You should try to make it to the 2017 Boring Conference.
I'm
now.
gonna
I think
try.
that you would like
It's
it.
sold out.
Right now,
so
you,
next year.
if you want to fund my journey, go to
start a
GoFundMe
posable
/ take me to the Boring Conference 2017.
Okay.
Come on, people, we can do this.
Right. So speaking of other silly students, because you're a student and you're silly, student scientists have actually discovered that it is impossible for people to cry a river, and that's what they've spent their time on. It's like
We were talking about crying before the show.
Yeah.
What?
Did you know
We were
that Matt, the man behind the scenes, hasn't cried for I think a couple of years. So he just doesn't cry.
And I was saying that I cry
That's
like
the-
every second day.
Yeah.
Like I'm always crying.
Like, I just feel like that's
cried yesterday
unnatural.
over my phone and over my
Yeah.
laptop
Yeah.
twice. That's twice.
Crying
But
is
yeah,
normal.
They've
You can cry,
actually
Matt.
found that they say it's clearly not an effective means of filling a body of water because they realize that you can't cry enough to fill a river, but they were wondering if you could cry enough to fill an Olympic-sized swimming pool. And I
Can you?
think they said the scientists report that if everybody in the world cried 55 tears, they could fill a pool. And that's the most interesting thing these students at a university were doing with their life. Can
like,
you
but
do
the-
something better? Or
Everyone knows that you can't really cry a river. The whole
yeah, but why
concept
do you
of it.
have to do a scientific?
I know, you
That's
wouldn't
why
need
it's
to. That's the
interesting
thing.
because
That's
you
why I'm
would-
saying it's pointless.
Your body would dehydrate long before you were able to
So, like,
cry a river.
who on God's green earth thought like actually people can actually cry rivers? Like
Yeah.
it's a
Students,
legitimate thing.
They wanted
I'm
to
gonna
answer
find
that
this
question.
out.
It's a question I need to answer.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
so funny.
Okay, well, I have one more that's quite funny as well, and it's about, I'm not sure if you saw it in the Odd Spot on The Age. I read it. It's about a French guy that is suing his his workplace for being bored. And I thought that was quite funny because the amount of jobs that I've worked that I've been bored, but I don't go suing them, especially when you earn $90,000 a year.
And he's suing
for being bored.
What was his job?
I'll read it out because I don't know 100%. He's 44 and he is demanding $400,000. He was working at a perfume enterprise, that's right. And it's because he started off working in a really high-profile position and then eventually went down to carry out much duller tasks. And he was saying that he thinks it was because the company wanted to bore him to death in order to convince him to quit voluntarily, therefore not have to pay him out as much. And so, instead of just deciding to quit, he stuck it to his boss and was like, no, I'll work out the 4 years, in which time he got paid over $160,000, by the way. Like,
do you
and
think
this is in euros, so he's getting paid so much money to do boring tasks, whatever. Get over it.
Yeah, do you think that
that's
he'll
bad?
win this case? Like, do you think that he has
No,
any
he's not
chance
gonna win
of
that.
getting this
Yeah,
money?
I'll let you know because they don't find out until July 27th. That's when the verdict comes in. So
yeah,
I'm
I'm
holding out to know if he
curious
actually
to know.
gets it.
If you think that's bad, there's this kid in the US that's suing his parents for having ginger hair and freckles.
Wait.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Oh, come
Can relate
on.
to that one.
Oh, come on. It's like me suing my parents
Aw.
for being black. That's just the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. But anyway, that's been our program today.
Thanks, Alana.
Thanks to all the contributors to the show, and we'll be back next week. But now, the sport.
Thanks.
Kyle, back in again.
We are.
Exciting stuff. I can't wait to talk a bit of footy with you and a special guest who behind the mic for once.
Yeah, we got Matt. We got our little graphics. What would your title be? What do you want to call yourself?
Little man who can't play audio files.
Yes, many apologies for that. I'm not sure if there's actually... Yeah, many apologies for that. I did not... That was totally my fault there, and it will be fixed next week, and we will get some good pay gap stories from that.
No worries. Tonight's game, it's probably not the most exciting on paper, Richmond and Hawthorn. Matt, I don't know how close your attention has been paid to Richmond this season, but they haven't exactly been the greatest side so far.
No, it's been pretty poor. It feels very, very similar to the Carlton collapse a while ago. Just everything seems to be going wrong. You know, we've got their injuries, and they just can't seem to catch a break at the moment.
They're facing the Hawthorn side who were ravaged last week by a dominant Giants side. And I don't think it's too likely that Hawthorn will come out 2 weeks in a row and get smashed. I think they're a side that will be looking for vengeance.
Yeah, if Richmond win tonight, it'd be like Leicester City winning the Premier League. The
5,000 to 1, Kyle was saying.
The three people that have put their money on Richmond tonight will be laughing all the way to the bookies.
Do you actually have the odds?
It's not 5,000 to 1, obviously, but I do not have the odds. But I'm going to predict $3.50 to $4, I reckon, for the Tigers.
I reckon it'd be more than that. I reckon you'd be looking at about $8 at least.
I wouldn't be surprised if it was a bit more generous than that either.
Well, we've got it up. It is $5 Richmond and $1.19 to Hawthorn.
Our new expert on the panel, Matt Coburn. See you later, Kyle. Collingwood Carlton on Saturday. This is one that is close to your heart, Kyle. What do you expect to happen?
Collingwood to beat Carlton by 15 goals.
That's
what I expect to happen, but it's probably not going to happen. It'd be nice. Nathan Brown's been axed, which is a big out. I thought it was pretty fair. He was pretty poor against West Coast last week. I thought he got the front position go too many times. Kennedy and Darling. They towed him up in defence. So he's been given notice, similar to Travis Cloak. He's a bit more low profile than Cloak, but he's still been just a cog in the defence for the past 6-7 years. So he's gone.
Interestingly on Cloak, there's been a few late whispers that Travis Cloak might be a late in for Collingwood. With Jacob Wiedering out for Carlton, Matt, what impact do you think that'll have?
To be honest with you, and it may not be popular opinion to Carl, I think that Collingwood is a lot better off without Cloak. So if Cloak is actually in as a Carlton supporter, I'll actually be rather happy with that because I think he really stuffs up a lot of their structure. Because, you know, you jam it down his throat as many times as you want. If you can't kick straight, it's not going to help you out.
I don't disagree with that, but I don't fully agree. I'll do something I don't really do, sit on the fence.
Wow. Mark this one down.
It's a hard one. He's a very good leader. He's a very good mark. He can get the ball when it's delivered to him properly, but he is very fickle in his mind. So it doesn't matter if he's getting the ball. If he kicks 1, 7 and 6 out of bounds on the full, he's not doing anyone any real favours. So, you take the good with the bad with him, I think.
Yeah, something that will be interesting, Dale Thomas is in his first good form in a very long time. And, you know, he always gets a very frosty reception when Carlton play Collingwood. So if he's actually playing well, that's going to be an interesting development to watch.
He's not even relevant anymore. I don't worry about him.
He was very good last week, admittedly against pretty poor opposition, but his last 2 games against Fremantle and Essendon, like I said, both sides out of form, but that's the best I've seen him play, I reckon, since he went to Carlton. If he can continue that form against Collingwood, he could be a little bit more relevant than you think, Kyle.
If he gets 45 touches and Andrew Walker gets 10 off the back flank, Collingwood will win. If Andrew Walker gets 25 touches and Dale Thomas gets 20 touches, Carlton will win. He's not damaging with the ball. He's got no penetration with his kick. And I don't rate him anymore. He was good at Collingwood, but he's poor at Carlton.
I sense some bitterness here.
You put the moz on him. One of the other Saturday games is Geelong versus West Coast down at Skilled Stadium, and this is a massive one for both sides. Geelong are in the best form they've been in for a few years, and they're playing with real confidence. And West Coast travels across to really anywhere in the last few years, despite their really impressive form, have been quite poor. They've got a bad record, and they suffered a tough loss, I think, against the Swans a few weeks ago. Is it Geelong's game for the taking?
Yeah, they'll beat West Coast quite easily. West Coast are poor travellers. They've got that MCG monkey on their back, and you have to win. You have to win the grand final at the MCG. I know it's not at the MCG; it's in Geelong, but it's still similar. It could be potentially very cold, very windy, and it's just not what Perth teams are used to.
They will be primed after their big victory last week, of course, against your team, Kyle. So you've given them a nice run into a tough game.
It's about 35 degrees over there. The Melbourne team goes over there.
Listen to the excuses come out. Typical Collingwood supporter. Never Buckley's fault?
No, it wasn't Buckley's fault last week. It was skill error and decision making under pressure.
How long will he keep his job for?
He'll keep the job for the rest of the year. And years past. I couldn't tell you.
The Buckley dynasty.
I'm not on the inside. I'm just a pleb on the outside looking in.
Pleb on the outside. Outside of Perth, the Eagles have only won 11 of 23 matches compared to their record of 22 of 30 in Perth under Adam Simpson. I agree. I think Geelong will be too good for them this week. I think we might just skip past Sydney Essendon because I can only see that going one way.
Definitely.
Gold Coast Melbourne though. It might not get a lot of attention, but it's another very interesting clash. Gold Coast have been in horrible form in the last few weeks. They started strongly, and on the other hand, the Demons, they've been up and down. They suffered a pretty poor loss to St Kilda last week. Who do we think's the better side going into this one?
I think the Gold Coast are the better team. They've had a session behind closed doors, like a speakeasy, where they've all just sprayed each other and given honest feedback and whatever the club does in their culture in that regard. And apparently Gary Ablett's come under a little bit of fire. They're not too happy with him. And normally the little master comes out a week after getting criticism like that, and he'll get about 47 touches, 200 Supercoach points, and kick about 4 goals, just absolutely tearing a game to shreds. And I don't think anything will be any different this week against Melbourne. They've just got no player remotely capable of going with him.
Even with with Gary Ablett firing back, the Gold Coast game last week was incredibly poor. I reckon I'm tipping Melbourne for this one. I reckon they may have been up and down a little bit, but they've still had a lot more consistent form. Something's really going wrong over in Gold Coast.
Yeah, I actually don't disagree with you there. I think Melbourne are a much better chance than Cole might be giving them. And Gold Coast backline at the moment, it's a bit ravaged by injury and suspension. And coming up against Jesse Hogan, who kicked 7, a career high last week against St Kilda. I think and Jack Watts has also been in pretty good goal kicking form. I think we might see Melbourne get on top. They've shown they have the ability this season to kick high scores. So do the Gold Coast. Of course, they've got Tom Lynch, the leading goal kicker at the moment. But for me, Melbourne are the better side, and I expect Melbourne probably get up by a few goals this week. On to Saturday night, the Western Bulldogs and Adelaide, a rematch of that thrilling elimination final last year. It was one of the games of the season. The Bulldogs been in different form in the last couple of weeks. They're struggling with a bit of injury, a bit of form, and a bit of composure. Adelaide have been scoring for fun. How do we see this game going?
I think it'd be very tight. I like to look at this game as the 1997 prelim final replay.
Don't mention it.
So I think on paper, I think the Bulldogs are a lot stronger simply because it's at Etihad Stadium. It's their fortress. They've turned it into their absolute fort. Their defence was a little bit under, a bit of fire last week with Waite firing down there.
Of course, they still managed to only concede, I think, about 65 points, though. So, considering North's amount of entries and their targets up forward, the structure did seem to hold.
Yeah, they were strong, but I think Eddie Betts, you got to do something about Eddie Betts. He's the main man. I think he's more important than Tex down there at the moment.
I agree.
But I'm not too sure who you've got to go with. Tex.
It's interesting. I know we played Fletcher Roberts on him last year in the elimination final, and Tex kicked a few goals on him and probably beat him. So I think the last year, of course, in that elimination final was a real shootout. Both teams, I think, scored over 120 or so. So I'd guess that there's less reliance on personnel this year and more on the structure. I think obviously you've got to control someone like Eddie Betts, who's incredible, just a goal freak. There'll be more pressure on whether the Bulldogs forward line can actually work this week. It struggled massively against the Kangaroos last week, and that's probably what cost them the game. Matt, what do you think about this game?
It's an interesting one because I reckon a full strength Doggies side would be comfortable winners, but at the moment with all the injuries, they just seem to be having to plug holes continually. And with the back line weakened and having such a strong forward line, Adelaide with Betts and Tex and
Tom Lynch.
Betts and Tex, it's going to be pretty. I reckon it'll be a close one, but I'm probably calling Adelaide just for the Doggies plugging holes. But come September, I reckon as a Doggies fan, you're going to be having a fun month.
I certainly hope so. I think the betting reflects where this game is stood at. I think the Bulldogs are just favourites by a matter of sense, really. I think it'll be tight, and it's a tough one to call. I think it should be an exciting game. Moving on to Perth, where Fremantle, who've been horrendous, coming up against a Greater Western Sydney side that's really found their feet. Can the Giants have never won against Freo over at Perth? Can they do the damage this week?
No, can the Giants? Absolutely. Freo are stuffed at the moment. There is no two ways about it. They are staring down the barrel of an incredibly poor season. The Giants will give them a drubbing.
It's already poor. The Giants, we're talking about before about their draft picks and their juniors and their access to all the good players, but they've actually gone out and recruited very well too. Stevie J down forward, triple premiership player, and Heath Shaw running the back line, premiership player again. They're just carrying. Like Heath Shaw won the best and fairest last year. Stevie J's on fire, kicking 5 goals in first half against Hawks. They're just learning, learning off each other, seeing what the good players are doing, and I just think GWS will be too strong. The massive long ground will suit Heath Shaw's run off half back, and I predict he'll get about 3 or 4 really important inside 50s down to Patton, and they will just kick all the goals. So, yeah, GWS by probably a fair bit, I'd say.
Yeah. Interestingly, this is the first time that the Giants have gone unchanged into a game. I think that shows that they're really finding their feet now. They've found some solidity. They've got 22 players who are contributing week in, week out now, and they're going to be too strong across the field for Fremantle, which is something I never thought I'd say at the start of the season. And especially in their forward line, that Jeremy Cameron's back now. He kicked 4 goals last week. They've got Patton. They've got Rory Lobb, who I've been incredibly impressed with, at 206 centimetres tall, and he's playing as almost a permanent forward, and he's been a revelation this year. And then when you've got the likes of Stevie J down there as well, he just knows where the goals are. The Giants are gonna give a drubbing, I reckon. St Kilda, North Melbourne. St Kilda were quite good against Melbourne last week. Do we think they can perform anywhere near their best against North and give them a bit of a challenge?
I don't think so. I think North, they're on. They're absolutely on. They'll go 7 in zip next week. This week, sorry. They just dominate the contested possessions, North Melbourne, and I just think, the North will get up. For the last game, Sam Newman dubbed this game about 16 years ago as Who Gives a Rat's Ass Cup, and I think that's what it'll be this weekend. So that's all we've got time for sports. So thank you, Toby, and thank you, Matt. I'm Kyle Humphries. Have a great weekend.